In this video series, we are going to be going over the implied relationship. This is a custom uh, type of relationship that's built into uh, Magic Draw, Cameo, Katia Magic, um, and it is a little bit difficult to understand. So I thought that we would make this video series to go over different use cases and to show just a general overview and some of the advanced uses of the implied relationship and its strengths and weaknesses. So implied relationships are actually documented pretty well on the No Magic website, linked right here. So if we open that website up, it goes over everything that I talk about in this video, the source criteria and the target parameters. It shows a few examples and explains those examples. Um, I found it to be a little bit challenging to just look at this and then read this text and follow it, which is why I thought these videos might be helpful. And let me know down in the comments if it's still a little bit challenging. I'm going to also include the example model, so hopefully that will help as well. But the idea behind it is to make it a little bit easier to follow and actually have some sort of oral explanation as to why these things work. But it is documented very well on the website, and it has the basic, uh, you know, composition and generalization relationships documented. It also has an example of an association. Think further down here. Well, uh, it has an example of an association above. It also has this example of a criteria of an allocate and a composition. Um, but I felt that there was a little bit more information needed to do some things that were a little bit more complicated. But please check out this website and use it in conjunction with these videos. I think it's very useful. From the example model, Implied Relations, which is in your Cameo installation folder under Samples and SysML, which you can see here if we go to Program Files, where I have 24x installed, and we can go to Sample Models, and we go to SysML, you will see one for Implied Relations right here. And I do have that open in this tab. And as you can see, it also gives an overview, which we'll talk about here in a little while. Starting with version 18.3, a new implied relationship capability is available. So it dates all the way back to 18.3, and this is all in the implied relations MDZip. Implied relations represent relationships between model elements caused by generalizations and compositions. So this is by default, but this can be modified to any sort of relationships, and it can be over multiple paths. You can create chains using criteria in source, and I show some advanced ways to do that. It's a little bit tricky, um, down here, I'll kind of give some advice as to what the preference would be, and I do have some examples as well. So first we have the source expression, and it's evaluated recursively. And then you have the criteria, which is evaluated for each of the sources. So it collects all the sources, and then it evaluates, and then it collects all the criteria, and it evaluates each of the criteria uh, on the source. So if you have a refine, so it starts at the source, it'll collect all of those elements that apply to source, and then you have the criteria, it will follow that relationship out, and then finally it will go through target expressions. However, When you get to the target expressions, as I state below, it can get a little bit tricky, so I would suggest that you just use source and criteria and not so much use target unless you really know what you're doing. So this returns a union of the target expression results. And if you have nothing for the target, then it just takes the source and criteria union. So when to not use implied relations? If you have multiple different logic chains, I would split the implied relations into separate operations. If you have really long specific relations in a chain that are greater than two relationships, it's probably better to just use a meta chain. You can create an implied relationship using meta chains. It's not quite the same as an implied relation. It's just simply using a custom meta chain in a traceability matrix. A couple more notes. When using parts in the simple navigation for any of the criteria, their types are also collected and evaluated. This is different than any other function that we use. So again, automatically, if you use parts in the source or criteria, it's automatically going to also collect all of their types. So you do not have to do that. It's built into the code. The target expression is optional and will create, or could create, I should probably say, unintended relationships, unless you really know what you're doing. Okay, so that's an introduction to implied relationships, and the rest of it I will go over in a separate video